What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks onto a morning talk show expecting a normal conversation, only to be blindsided by a host who seems more interested in controversy than conversation? In just 48 seconds, what started as a routine promotional appearance turned into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in morning television history, as Savannah Guthrie's shocking comments pushed Samuel L. Jackson to his absolute breaking point, forcing him to do something nobody saw coming. The studio lights were bright that morning, the kind of artificial sunshine that made everything look perfect for the cameras. Samuel L. Jackson sat in the guest chair, relaxed and ready to talk about his latest project. He had done hundreds of these interviews over his decades-long career. This was supposed to be easy. Routine. Just another morning show appearance. Savannah Guthrie smiled at the camera, then turned to her guest with that practiced television warmth that never quite reaches the eyes. "So Samuel, we're so excited to have you here," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "But before we get to your new film, I think our viewers are dying to know about some of the choices you've made in your career." Samuel nodded politely, expecting the usual questions about his iconic roles, his longevity in the business, maybe even some fun stories from movie sets. That's how these things normally went. "You've played a lot of, how should I put this, angry characters over the years," Savannah continued, leaning forward slightly. "Some people might say you've been typecast. Do you ever worry that audiences can't see you as anything other than, well, aggressive?" The smile on Samuel's face faltered for just a moment. Hoda Kotb, sitting beside Savannah, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Al Roker, standing near the weather map, looked down at his notes. "I wouldn't say aggressive," Samuel replied carefully, his voice measured. "I play complex characters with depth and range. That's what actors do." Right, Savannah said, waving her hand dismissively. "But you have to admit, there's a pattern. The tough guy. The intimidating presence. It's basically your brand at this point, isn't it?" "My brand is being a professional actor who takes on challenging roles," Samuel said, his jaw tightening slightly. "I've played everything from Shakespeare to superheroes. I don't think that qualifies as a pattern." Savannah laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the studio. "Come on, Samuel. We all know what we're getting when we see your name on a poster. You're not exactly known for playing the romantic lead or the quirky sidekick, are you?" Craig Melvin, sitting on the other side of the panel, cleared his throat. "Actually, Samuel has incredible range. I've seen him in dramatic roles that were really moving, and—" "Craig, I'm conducting the interview here," Savannah interrupted, not even looking at her co-host. Her eyes stayed locked on Samuel. "I think our guest can speak for himself." The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. The camera operators exchanged glances. Producers in the control room started talking rapidly into their headsets. "You're right. I can speak for myself," Samuel said, his voice taking on an edge now. "And what I'm speaking about is respect. Something you seem to be having trouble with this morning." "Oh, don't be so sensitive," Savannah said, laughing again. "We're just having a conversation, unless you can't handle a little honest discussion about your career." "Honest discussion?" Samuel leaned forward in his chair. "You haven't asked me one honest question yet. You've just been making assumptions and trying to put me in a box." Savannah's smile was starting to look more like a smirk. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Samuel. You play the same type of character over and over. The angry man, the guy with the attitude. It's not exactly groundbreaking work, is it?" Hoda Kotb jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Samuel, I personally loved your performance in that recent drama where you played the father dealing with loss. It was so nuanced. And—" "Hoda, please," Savannah cut her off sharply. "Let's not pretend like one dramatic role erases 30 years of the same performance." "The same performance?" Samuel's voice was rising now. "Have you actually watched any of my films? Or are you just reading off some notes someone handed you?" "I've seen enough," Savannah shot back. "And I think I speak for a lot of viewers when I say, we're a bit tired of the whole angry black man routine you've got going." The studio went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Hoda's mouth fell open. Al Roker's eyes went wide. Craig Melvin looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. "Excuse me?" Samuel said quietly, dangerously quiet. "What did you just say?" Savannah seemed to realize she had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I'm just being honest. It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? You've built your entire career on playing into certain stereotypes, and now you're upset when someone points it out?" "You need to stop talking," Samuel said, his voice cold as ice. "Right now." "This is my show," Savannah replied, her voice taking on a sharp, defensive tone. "I can say whatever I want, and if you can't handle a tough interview, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to come on." "A tough interview?" Samuel stood up from his chair, his microphone pack clipping against the armrest. "This isn't a tough interview. This is you being disrespectful and ignorant, and I'm not going to sit here and let you talk to me like I'm some kind of caricature." The producers were frantically waving from behind the cameras, trying to signal for a commercial break, but Savannah wasn't stopping. "Oh, here we go," she said, throwing her hands up. "The big dramatic exit. Very on brand for you, Samuel. Why don't you storm off set? Give everyone exactly what they expect from you." "You know what?" Samuel's voice boomed through the studio. "I came here as a professional to talk about my work, to have a respectful conversation with people I thought were journalists. But what I found instead was someone more interested in stirring up controversy than actually doing their job." "I am doing my job," Savannah insisted, her face flushing red. "My job is to ask the hard questions that other people are afraid to ask." "No," Samuel pointed at her, his fingers shaking with anger. "Your job is to conduct interviews with respect and integrity. Your job is to make your guests feel welcome and have a meaningful conversation with them. But you don't know how to do that, do you? Because you think being rude and making offensive comments is the same thing as being a good interviewer." Hoda reached out toward Samuel. "Please, let's just take a breath and—" "Don't apologize for her," Samuel said, his voice still firm but slightly softer when addressing Hoda. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to get a reaction, and now she's got one. Savannah stood up from her chair now, too, matching Samuel's energy. "If you can't handle criticism about your work, then maybe you're not as professional as you think you are." "Criticism?" Samuel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You didn't criticize my work. You made racist assumptions about who I am as an actor and as a person. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see that is exactly the problem." "Don't you dare play the race card on my show," Savannah snapped, her voice rising to match his. "I was talking about your acting choices. Nothing more." "You literally just said I play the angry black man," Samuel shot back. "You said those exact words. Everyone in this studio heard you. The cameras caught it all. So don't stand there and pretend you were just critiquing my filmography." Al Roker finally found his voice. "Maybe we should all just calm down and—" "Al, stay out of this." Savannah barked at him without looking away from Samuel. "This is between me and our guest, who apparently can't handle a little pushback." "A little pushback?" Samuel's voice was incredulous. "You have insulted me, stereotyped me, and dismissed my entire career in the span of 5 minutes. And now, you're acting like I'm the one with the problem?" "I haven't insulted anyone," Savannah fired back, her face growing redder. "I simply asked questions that needed to be asked. If you're offended by honest observations about your career trajectory, that sounds like a personal issue." "Honest observations?" Samuel repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You called my life's work a routine. You reduced 30-plus years of diverse performances down to a stereotype. You dismissed everything I've accomplished because it doesn't fit into your narrow view of what I should be." "I never said you haven't accomplished things," Savannah replied defensively. "I'm just saying you've accomplished the same thing over and over again. There's a difference." "No, there isn't," Samuel shot back. "Because you're wrong. And the fact that you can't see how wrong you are is exactly the problem with this entire conversation. Hoda tried to intervene. Maybe we're all just looking at this from different perspectives. Samuel, your work has been incredibly varied. And Savannah, perhaps the question could have been framed differently. Don't defend me, Hoda, Savannah snapped. I don't need defending. My question was perfectly valid. Your question was an attack disguised as an inquiry, Samuel said firmly, and everyone in this room knows it except you. Craig Melvin stood up, trying to position himself between them. Look, tensions are high. Maybe we should take 5. Let everyone cool off, and then we can... There's nothing to cool off from, Samuel said firmly. I'm done here. I don't need to cool off. I need to leave before I say something I'll regret. What could you possibly regret saying at this point? Savannah challenged. You've already accused me of racism, insulted my professionalism, and thrown a tantrum on live television. What else is there? I haven't thrown a tantrum, Samuel said slowly, his voice dangerously calm. A tantrum would be yelling and screaming and losing control. What I'm doing is calmly explaining to you why your behavior is unacceptable. If you can't tell the difference, that explains a lot about how we got here. Oh, that's rich, Savannah said, her arms crossed. You've been saying things you should regret this whole time. Accusing me of being racist? On live television? How dare you? How dare I? Samuel's eyebrows shot up. How dare I call out offensive behavior when I see it? How dare I expect to be treated with the same respect you'd give any other guest? Is that what you're asking? I treat all my guests the same, Savannah insisted, her voice shaking with anger now. I ask tough questions. I don't coddle people just because they're famous. That's what makes me good at my job. No, what would make you good at your job is knowing the difference between tough questions and insulting questions, Samuel countered. Asking me about challenges in my career? That's a tough question. Reducing my entire body of work to a stereotype? That's an insult. Al Roker cleared his throat loudly. I think what Samuel is trying to say is that tone matters. The way we phrase questions matters. And maybe, Savannah, the way this particular question was phrased came across differently than you intended. I phrased it exactly how I intended, Savannah said stubbornly. I'm not going to apologize for being direct. Nobody's asking you to apologize for being direct, Samuel said, his patience clearly wearing thin. We're asking you to apologize for being disrespectful. There's a huge difference, and if you can't see it, that's concerning. I didn't accuse you of anything, Samuel said, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. I simply repeated back what you said to me. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should think about why. I am not uncomfortable, Savannah insisted, though her voice was shaking now. I am a professional journalist who has interviewed hundreds of celebrities, and I have never been treated with such disrespect. Then maybe those hundreds of celebrities were too polite to tell you the truth, Samuel replied. Maybe they just smiled and nodded and got through the interview because it was easier than calling out your behavior. But I'm not going to do that. I've been in this industry too long to let someone talk to me like you just did. Hoda tried again. Samuel, please. We value having you here. This got out of hand, but we can fix this. We can start over, and... No, Hoda, Samuel said gently but firmly. This can't be fixed with a do-over. Your co-host just showed me exactly who she is, and I believe her. I'm not going to sit here and pretend this is okay. So you're just going to leave? Savannah challenged. You're going to walk off in the middle of a live broadcast because your feelings got hurt? My feelings aren't hurt, Samuel said, his voice steady. My time is just too valuable to waste on someone who doesn't understand basic respect. You wanted a reaction? You got one. But it's not the one you wanted, is it? You wanted me to yell and scream and prove your little stereotype right. But instead, I'm calmly telling you that I don't have to accept this treatment, and I'm leaving. This is so typical, Savannah said, shaking her head. A celebrity who can't handle real journalism. You're all the same. You want softball questions and praise, and the moment someone challenges you, you fall apart. Real journalism? Samuel stopped, turning back to face her one more time. Real journalism is asking thoughtful questions. Real journalism is doing your research. Real journalism is treating your subjects with dignity while still holding them accountable. What you did today wasn't journalism. It was an ambush, and everyone watching knows it. The other hosts were silent now, watching this unfold like spectators at a car crash. The studio crew stood frozen, unsure whether to cut the cameras or keep rolling. I have conducted thousands of interviews, Savannah said, her voice getting louder. I have won awards for my journalism. I don't need some actor telling me how to do my job. And I have worked with hundreds of interviewers, Samuel countered. Some good, some bad, some brilliant, some terrible. And in all my years, I have never encountered someone who was so determined to be disrespectful while acting like they're the victim. I am not the victim here, Savannah protested. You're the one making a scene. I'm the one standing up for myself, Samuel corrected her. There's a difference. You wanted to provoke me, and when I didn't react the way you wanted, you got angry. That's on you, not me. Craig Melvin stood up again. Look, we're all professionals here. Let's take a commercial break. Everyone take a breath, and we can figure this out off camera. There's nothing to figure out, Samuel said, unhooking his microphone and placing it on the chair. I came here to promote my film and have a pleasant conversation. That's clearly not going to happen, so I'm exercising my right to leave. You're under contract to be here for the full segment, Savannah said quickly, grasping at straws now. You can't just walk out. Watch me, Samuel said simply. Sue me if you want. My lawyers will be very interested to hear about how this interview went. Hoda stood up, her voice pleading. Samuel, please, don't let it end like this. We can talk this through. Savannah, maybe you could... I'm not apologizing, Savannah interrupted her co-host. I didn't do anything wrong. I asked legitimate questions about his career, and he turned it into some big racial issue because he couldn't handle the heat. Samuel paused at the edge of the set, looking back at her with something between pity and disgust. You really don't get it, do you? You really think you're in the right here? I know I am, Savannah said defiantly. That's the saddest part of all this, Samuel said quietly. You'll go on thinking you did nothing wrong. You'll tell yourself I was too sensitive, that I overreacted, that I played the race card. You'll convince yourself that you were just being a tough interviewer. And you'll never understand why what you said was wrong. Because nothing I said was wrong, Savannah insisted. Al Roker finally stepped forward. Savannah, maybe we should listen to what he's saying. Maybe we should consider that... Al, I don't need you to mansplain this to me, Savannah snapped at him. I can defend myself. Nobody's attacking you, Al said carefully. But maybe we should think about how this looks, how this sounds. I don't care how it looks, Savannah said, her voice rising again. I care about the truth. And the truth is that Samuel L. Jackson has made a career playing the same type of character, and when I pointed that out, he couldn't handle it. You didn't just point it out, Samuel said, his voice cutting through her rant. You mocked it. You dismissed it. You made it about race when it had nothing to do with race until you brought it up. And now you're standing here acting like I'm the problem. You are the problem, Savannah shot back. You and every other celebrity who thinks they're above criticism. I have never been above criticism, Samuel said firmly. I welcome intelligent, thoughtful criticism. What I don't welcome is being stereotyped and disrespected on national television by someone who clearly didn't bother to actually understand my work before I got here. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The studio audience, which had been silent this whole time, was completely still. Some people looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. A few were whispering to each other. I think we need to go to commercial, Craig said desperately, looking toward the control room. We're not going to commercial, Savannah said sharply. We're going to finish this conversation like adults. There's nothing left to say, Samuel said, turning away from the set. I've said everything I need to say. The rest is up to you and your conscience. My conscience is clear, Savannah called after him. Can you say the same? Samuel stopped one more time, not turning around. My conscience is perfectly clear. I came here in good faith. I was respectful. I answered questions, and when I was disrespected, I stood up for myself with dignity and calm. So yes, my conscience is absolutely clear. Then why are you running away? Savannah taunted. I'm not running, Samuel said, finally turning to face her one last time. I'm choosing not to engage with someone who has shown me they don't deserve my time or my energy. That's not running. That's wisdom. Hoda had tears in her eyes now. Samuel, please. We're sorry. I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened this way. You have nothing to apologize for, Hoda, Samuel said kindly. You tried to help. You tried to steer this back to something productive. But some people don't want productive. They want drama. And I'm too old and too tired to give them what they want. So that's it? Savannah said, her arms still crossed. You're just going to leave? You're going to walk out on millions of viewers who tuned in to see you? Those millions of viewers are about to see something more valuable than a movie promotion, Samuel said. They're going to see that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because someone has a microphone and a camera. They're going to see that standing up for yourself doesn't make you difficult or unprofessional. It makes you human. How noble, Savannah said sarcastically. The big movie star teaching us all a lesson. I'm not trying to teach anyone a lesson, Samuel said tiredly. I'm just trying to maintain my dignity. Something I would have thought a professional journalist would understand. I understand plenty, Savannah retorted. I understand that you couldn't handle a tough interview, so you're making it about me instead of taking responsibility for your own sensitivity. Samuel shook his head slowly. You know what the really sad thing is? You genuinely believe that. You're going to walk away from this thinking you were right. And that's why this conversation was doomed from the start. Al Roker stepped toward Samuel. For what it's worth, I think you handled this with a lot of grace. Thank you, Al, Samuel said, shaking his hand. I appreciate that. Don't encourage him, Savannah snapped at Al. He's being completely unreasonable. Savannah, Craig said carefully, maybe we should take a step back and... I'm not taking a step back, Savannah interrupted. I'm standing my ground. I did nothing wrong, and I'm not going to pretend I did just to make everyone comfortable. Nobody's asking you to pretend, Samuel said. We're asking you to have some self-awareness, to recognize that maybe, just maybe, you crossed a line today. I didn't cross any line, Savannah insisted. Then we have nothing more to talk about, Samuel said with finality. He turned to the other hosts. Hoda, Craig, Al, it was good to see you. I'm sorry it ended this way. They nodded at him, clearly torn between supporting their colleague and acknowledging that something had gone very wrong. Samuel walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet studio. Savannah watched him go, her face a mixture of anger and something else. Confusion, maybe, or the first tiny seed of doubt. This is ridiculous, she called out one more time. You're making a huge mistake walking out like this. Samuel paused at the studio door, his hand on the handle. For a moment, it looked like he might turn around and say something else, but then he just shook his head and pushed through the door, leaving the chaos behind him. The camera stayed on the empty chair where he had been sitting just minutes before. The other hosts stood in uncomfortable silence, unsure what to do next. Savannah finally sat back down, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to compose herself. Well, she said, her voice not quite steady, I guess that's what happens when celebrities can't handle honest questions. But nobody responded. Hoda was staring at her hands. Craig was looking anywhere but at Savannah. Al was shaking his head slowly. The studio was silent, except for the frantic chatter coming through everyone's earpieces as the producers tried to figure out how to salvage the rest of the show. "Are you all just going to sit there?" Savannah asked, her voice rising defensively. "Are none of you going to back me up? I was doing my job." "Were you, though?" Craig asked quietly, finally meeting her eyes. "Because from where I was sitting, it looked like you were trying to get a rise out of him from the very first question." "I was challenging him," Savannah protested. "That's what good interviewers do. They challenge their guests." "There's challenging, and then there's what you did," Al said carefully. "And I'm not sure those two things are the same." Hoda looked at Savannah, then at the empty chair, then back at Savannah. "I think maybe we should have handled that differently." "I handled it exactly right," Savannah said defensively. "I asked tough questions. That's my job." "Your job is also to make guests feel respected," Craig said quietly. "And I don't think that happened today." "Oh, so now you're all turning on me?" Savannah looked around at her co-hosts. "He's the one who walked out. He's the one who made this into a big production. And somehow I'm the bad guy?" "Nobody's saying you're the bad guy," Al said carefully. "But maybe we should think about how that interview came across. Because from where I was standing, it didn't look good." "I don't care how it looked," Savannah said, though her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. "I care about the truth. The truth is that one of the most respected actors in Hollywood just walked off our set," Hoda said softly, "and we need to figure out what that means." In the hallway outside the studio, Samuel stood for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. A production assistant approached him nervously. "Mr. Jackson, is there anything we can—" "No," Samuel said not unkindly. "There's nothing anyone can do. This is just how it is sometimes." He walked toward the exit, past the photos of past guests and memorable moments that lined the walls. His phone was already buzzing in his pocket, with calls from his publicist, his agent, people who had been watching live and wanted to know what happened. But Samuel didn't answer. He just kept walking, his head held high, knowing that he had done the right thing, that he had stood up for himself with dignity, that he had shown millions of viewers that you don't have to accept disrespect, no matter who's delivering it or how big their platform is. Behind him, in the studio, the show struggled to continue. Savannah tried to move on to the next segment, but her voice was shaky. Her co-hosts looked uncomfortable. The energy in the room had completely changed. And somewhere, in living rooms and offices, and on phones across the country, people were watching and talking, and realizing they had just witnessed something unprecedented. A moment when a guest said, "Enough is enough." When someone refused to play along with disrespect, disguised as journalism. The door closed behind Samuel L. Jackson as he left the building, and with it closed a chapter on what was supposed to be a routine morning show appearance. But what it became instead was a stark reminder that respect is not negotiable, that dignity is not for sale, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away.